This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brighton Central School District Board of Education business meeting for January 19th, 2021. Please take note that the Board of Education of the Brighton Central School District, in response to the continuing emergency circumstances caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and consistent with New York State Governor Cuomo's we are conducting our scheduled public meeting tonight, January 19th, 2021 at 7 p.m. via Zoom and streamed through our district website via Zoom webinar. In a moment, we'll offer the opportunity for members of the public who wish to make comment. Please, if you are a member of the Brighton community and member of the public who wish to make a comment, if you would go please to the chat feature at the bottom of your screen, put your name and your address in, and we will call on you shortly for your comment. And you're welcome to ask a question, make a statement, or further engage with the board, and we would be happy to have you comment. In addition to the ability for you to comment this evening at our board meeting, you're always welcome to contact the board or Dr. McGowan directly by email or telephone or postal mail. All of our contact information is included on the website, and you're welcome to please send us a note if you have something that you would like to share or a question that you would like to ask. At this point, Dr. McGowan, has anybody, I realize we haven't given a lot of time for folks, is there anyone who has signed into the chat that wishes to speak to the board?
No, there's not.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that. And again, we'll remind folks, please feel free to contact us using any other means, and we will be happy to get back to you to answer your questions. At this point, board, I would like to ask for a motion to approve our agenda for this evening as amended as follows. And I did send a quick note to Kim on this, but we're going to amend the agenda just in terms of order of the events, in terms of what was posted earlier. We're going to replace current items 6, 7, and 8 in the order that they're listed. And we're going to change item number 6 will now be the full day kindergarten implementation update. Item number 7 will be the budget review, and item number 8 will be blueprint updates and recommendations. Am I correct? And Dr. McGowan, and that's what the order we wanted to change things to?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. With that change, then, board, please, a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Larry and seconded by Sue. And I also make note for attendance purposes, Kim, that we are 6 this evening. Board member Andrea Costanza is not with us. So all in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are 6 in favor and none opposed. Thank you. Motion, please, for approval of minutes from the January 5th, 2021 Education Board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Approved by motion made by Julene, seconded by Christina, I believe. Does anyone have any corrections or additions or deletions to those minutes that they want to bring up at this point?
I wasn't present. Should I abstain from voting?
Yeah, I guess that would be the appropriate thing, Karen. Thank you very much. And the rest of us, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's 5 in favor, 1 abstain, and motion's carried. Thank you. Then to begin things tonight, we will have the final installment, if you will, of our Brighton Believer Award Recognition Program. And I turn it over to Dr. McGowan to begin that process tonight.
Thanks so much, Mr. Kakanovich. This is something we've enjoyed so much, and I think just such a great bright spot in this moment where, you know, we're thinking about community, thinking about connecting, thinking about how great it'll be to be back together again soon, hopefully, but also just a recognition, particularly lately, of how important community is and how important it is that we support each other, engage with each other, and be together, even when we're apart. And we continue this process, as we mentioned in previous meetings, that last year the Brighton Believes Council started selecting 22 nominees to receive these Brighton Believers Awards. at the meeting in February. However, the awards last February, the awards were not able to be presented because of the pandemic and our shutdown in March, but we didn't forget about these members of the community and wanted to make sure they were recognized for demonstrating our Brighton Believes character traits: integrity, respect, responsibility, kindness, and self-control. The award winners are parents, students, teachers, staff members, coaches, and community members. And I'm very excited to begin this meeting's installment with a few wonderful, wonderful community members, and starting with a member of my neighborhood and friend and former crossing guard, Stephen Botcher, who I know is with us tonight. I saw him on the screen. Despite his Red Sox fandom, he's being recognized tonight. And I only say that because it speaks to who Stephen is, in the sense that my kids had a conversation with him nearly every morning crossing the street, and he found ways to engage with all kids in this friendly, wonderful way, which is how they learned about him liking the Red Sox, and had that positive you could give a wave also. Thank you so much. And now Dr. Elson Rio, principal of French Road, to present our next Brighton Believers Award.
Hello and good evening, everyone. I feel really fortunate to be here tonight to speak about two former French Road students who are now 6th graders. And I'm so happy to see them both on here on this Zoom because I haven't seen them in so long, and they're great kids. So Quinn, you are going to be up first. And Quinn, give everyone a wave so we can see you. So good to see you, Quinn. Quinn was a fifth grader last year at French Road, and he was nominated by Mr. LaPaglia. And Mr. LaPaglia shared Quinn's positive attitude, strong work ethic, and ability to consistently demonstrate the FRES star qualities are the characteristics I witness each PE class. He is a strong role model for his classmates to emulate. Quinn is always a great teammate during PE activities, as well as an opponent who shows good sportsmanship at all times. Mr. Simmons, his 5th grade teacher, stated that if he could put a student on the star qualities poster as an example for others, Quinn would be his overwhelming choice. He doesn't try to be a star student, he is a star student. And Ms. Mazurowski, another 5th grade teacher, shared that Quinn shines daily as a kind and courteous classmate, and his essence is the definition of respect. He is a friend to all and ensures that those around him feel accepted at all times. Quinn speaks with consideration and dignity. Best of all, he's always smiling, just like he is right now. Congratulations to you, Quinn. And next up, we have the lovely Olivia Weiser. Olivia, just give everyone a wave. Hi, Olivia. How are you? So Olivia also was a FRES 5th grader last school year, and she was also nominated by physical education teacher Rick LaPaglia. And Mr. LaPaglia wrote, "When I observe Olivia during my PE class, I see a bright, energetic, and happy girl. When she's running around with her classmates, her smile lights up the gym. Olivia is always kind and compassionate to the other students in her class. And having students like Olivia brightens my day and serves as a reminder of why I enjoy teaching so much." Her classroom teacher, Mrs. Close, remarked that she is a very hard worker and a good friend to all of her peers. As a role model for her classmates, she is a member of Student Council and Safety Patrol, and her art teacher, Mrs. Bertner, shared that Olivia is the first student who will offer to help another classmate with a project and even assist special needs students in her class. Congratulations, Olivia! 2 awesome 6th graders now, and I'm so glad to see you on here tonight. Congratulations to you both. And next up is Mr. Nate Merritt.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and congratulating a member of one of our coaching staff, Rachel Mattern, TCMS occupational therapist and one of our Nordic ski coaches. She was nominated by Katie Musa and BHS student Bridget Musa. Katie wrote, I am in awe of her exceptional skills she demonstrates working with our young athletes. She is warm, positive, consistent, organized, and most importantly, joyful. She is able to discuss difficult situations with kids regarding sportsmanship and resilience without laying on a feeling of guilt or negative feelings. Bridget wrote, Rachel is always ready with encouraging words, extra mittens, and even a hug. Something really special about Rachel is that she can make you feel like the most important person at any given moment. She makes new skiers feel welcomed and always checks in with them to make sure they're having the best experience possible. She is a huge part of what makes Nordic ski an enjoyable sport for all that are participate in Brighton. Thank you, Rachel, so much. I don't know what we would do without you in our Nordic ski program and the success that we've seen. Thank you so much. Congratulations. And next, we will turn it over to Dr. Hall at the high school.
Good evening, everybody. I am very proud to give the final award tonight, I believe, to Maddie Valinsky. Maddie's now a senior at Brighton High School. Maddie was nominated by Rita Bannister, a librarian who worked with Maddie at the Aberlin Reynolds Elementary School in the city of Rochester. Rita wrote, Maddie works tirelessly to secure over 1,000 gently used books to distribute to every student each year. For the past 3 years, her dedication to helping our students have their own books to take home and keep, as you might imagine, made a significant impact on our student body. In addition to the books, she secured backpacks from SUNY Geneseo, St. John Fisher College, and Nazareth College. Her genuine interest in helping the students was not only gratifying, it was inspiring. Maddie's work encompasses all of the character traits of Brighton Believes. Maddie's interaction with students was always respectful and kind. Students quickly realized she was someone who cared about them and wanted to help them. Maddie is a mature, responsible young woman who has made a positive impact on hundreds of students. I can only imagine what a wonderful difference she will make in the lives of people as she continues on her life's journey. Congratulations, Maddie. That is certainly a wonderful tribute to you. Kudos.
Thanks again to all of our award winners, and congratulations to you. We appreciate everything you do to make our community a better place and to demonstrate the Brighton beliefs for everybody else in the community as well. Great, great work. Thank you.
And also on behalf of the Board of Education, to not only those here this evening with us, but all 22 awardees. You know, little did any of us know that when the Brighton Believes Council selected 22 folks last a year plus ago, and the plan was for last February to have a ceremony in the boardroom and award certification and honor everybody. We certainly, and then everything changed, right? But for all of our people, I'm so appreciative of all the folks who took the time to nominate and also join in, those of you this evening, but also on previous meetings of the year, join in to the process. Those of the awardees who were able to do that and join with us, we certainly appreciate that. And thank you to everyone for allowing this to work in the Zoom environment and provide that recognition for so many folks throughout our community, just a wide array of folks who help out in every day in every way. So thank you all, and we do appreciate that. And I'm always at this point supposed to remind folks, you're welcome to stay with us for the rest of the evening, but you're also more than welcome to excuse yourselves at this point too if you choose not to sit through the remainder of our meeting. But thank you again, and we do appreciate everyone's efforts. Next up this evening, we're going to move on in our amended agenda, item number 6 now, the full day kindergarten implementation update. I turned it over to Dr. Debbie Baker and along with Council Rock Principal Matt Tappan.
Second, if you will, for me to pull up my screen. Can everyone see that? Can everybody see it? Just Allison, I see you. Give me a thumbs up if you see it. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So before I turn it over to Matt, just really want to kind of set the stage for, why is it that we even started to, to engage in this conversation several years ago, actually many, many years ago on several different occasions. And I think it makes sense for us to start with our basic mission statement, right? What is it that we aspire for our children? And as you can see by our mission statement, that we really aspire for them to become responsible, contributing citizens of a global community. And it's not just some of our students for whom we aspire to, but rather we aspire that for all of our students. And so we really feel like, setting that ground early, setting the foundation with a full day kindergarten program is going to do just that. For those of you that have been around as long as I have, you know that it seems like there's been a lot of changes in the world of New York State, and in particular, the New York State standards. And you're right. In the last 10 years, the state standards for ELA and math have actually shifted 2+ times. We're just getting ready to enter into what they call that third iteration of the next gen standards. In addition to that, in the last 3 years, the social studies and science standards have changed. And so it's very clear when we look at what the state expects, they really expect a rigorous academic experience for the student, for all of our students, in order to produce those critically thinking, independent learners that we know are so important to contributing to our mission or to realizing, the aspirations that we have for our kids. And so when we think about that, we also think about what the state also says within the standards, in that they recognize the importance of addressing the needs of the whole child. And for our youngest learners, the importance of play, the importance of providing them with a well-rounded academic experience to best meet those needs. As we focus on all of our learners, we know that that's going to take more time. The half day is just not adequate enough for us to be really developing our students in the way that not only we aspire, but also the state aspires that. Moving to a full day kindergarten program affords us the time. It affords us the opportunity to ensure that all of our learners meet those high goals that we have for them. And so tonight, Matt really is going to share with the Board of Education and the community what that full day kindergarten program will look like and how we feel like we can best meet all the needs of our youngest learners. So Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you, and just tell me when you want me to move the slide.
Okay, I will. Thank you. So the mission statement was the Brighton mission statement, but over the last several years, Council Rock has also worked to develop our mission statement and our vision. And of course, we have to put it in, a picture with colors. But really, it's looking at how do we develop joyful learners and contributing members of our community through developmentally appropriate practice, and really focusing on what that joyful learning looks like, the inquiry, the questioning, all of that. And Dr. Baker was exactly right. That takes time. And, I walk a fine line here because I am incredibly proud of the work that our kindergarten teachers, all of our teachers at Council Rock do. So what I'm about to share with you is certainly not a detriment or any kind of a statement on what they are doing, but choices have to be made when there is so much to pack a day. And my internet says it's unstable, so if I freeze out, someone text me. So choices have to be made. So really, I'm here to just talk a little bit about the benefits of what full day K will bring. And some of it does compare to what we aren't able to do in our half day program, or the choices we have to make to make it through. So Dr. Baker, if you could advance to the next slide.
I think I can. I don't know. I'm understanding that what you're seeing is not the full screen, and I apologize because on my screen it is the full screen. So are you seeing the next slide at least?
I am at least seeing I'm seeing the next slide. So
all right, perfect.
All right. So some of the benefits really are that we will be able to go deeper. We will be able to take the concepts that are introduced and allow the breathing room and the opportunity for students and teachers and staff to go deeper with those concepts. Really, time. I mean, I can't tell you enough. Time is the biggest commodity I think that we all have, but in this program, it's the one that really gets on them. And I'm going to show you a comparison. The use of our support services, culturally responsive practice, and then some hopes and dreams. So if you want to advance it, Dr. Baker. All right, so I think everyone knows, but the needs of our kindergartners as well as all of our learners really are those academics that Dr. Baker spoke about, and also the social emotional learning, the interactions with each other. And for kindergartners, although many of our students come with school experience, it's the first formal school experience or the first K-12 for sure experience. So again, all of that takes time. If you advance, I'm going to show you a side-by-side comparison of the current half-day program and what we are in the process of planning. So the order of things may not be how things go, but So currently our kindergarten teachers start with a morning meeting of some kind that can last 15 to 20 minutes. You can see that that's probably not going to change for the full day program because that's about how long our kids can sit during that time. But then we start to get into the major differences. So our English language arts time is about 60 minutes right now. And they pack a whole lot into that 60 minutes. If you are in any kindergarten class, they are moving and grooving the whole time. It could include read aloud, phonics, phonemic awareness, shared reading, centers, reading with the teacher, learning through play and exploration. With the full day program, we're really going to be able to expand that time from 60 minutes to about 90 to 120 minutes, about twice as long in that critical ELA, learning those basic concepts and the foundations for all of their learning in reading that will go on. Again, snack and break, not going to change much, 15 minutes. Please know that 90 to 120 minutes is not going to be a continuous time. So that's going to have breaks built into it and, you know, active learning. But when we look at the subject matter as a whole, then if you move on to math really right now, the program that we have is designed for a full day program. They're about able to do about 30 minutes of math within that time. The guidelines for the math and what they need really is 60 minutes. So again, doubling the time. And this could include whole group lessons, the rotation, small groups, again, learning through that exploration and play that Dr. Baker mentioned as well. If you'll move on to the next slide, Dr. Baker, please. So special area is another place where we gain a lot by going to the full day. Right now, students are every other day receiving 30 minutes of either music, library, or physical education. In the full day program, they will have 30 to 40 minute classes. Again, art is a little bit longer. We get to add art into there. PE will be twice a cycle. Music will be twice a cycle. And then library will continue once a cycle. Currently, we do not have lunch in the program because we're a half day. So obviously that will account for 30 minutes of the day. Again, social studies and science, you know what I said, we have to make choices, and social studies and science, as important as they are, and certainly something that we value, right now they have to be integrated into the ELA program. There's not time to include social studies or science in a regular day as its own kind of standalone. We're looking at social studies and science really being able to get the due that they will have. And again, it's an area where kids can explore and play and learn through experiential experiences. And really that will be 30 to 45 minutes a day. And then recess. So our recess right now, again, is, although our teachers do an incredible job of providing breaks, it's not every day, because if a special is in on that day, think about it, that's 2 hours left of the day if a special is in that day. And then you start to take away some of those other essential times, and sometimes getting outside or getting that that movement break just can't happen. With the full day program, again, we will ensure recess for kids every day for 30 minutes. So, you know, the time is a huge factor, but there are a lot of other benefits. So if you want to fast forward. So support right now, you know, students who need a little bit of extra, whether it is in the realm of special education or speech or physical or occupational therapy, or just a little boost in their reading or math understanding. Right now, those support services, sometimes they're integrated into the day, but often we have to pull kids before or after school, so they stay during that 11 to 12 o'clock time to maximize those services. And again, choices are made. With the full day program, we're hoping to be able to integrate those throughout the day as it makes sense for the child and for the classroom schedule, to really provide those other opportunities for kids to learn within what they're doing and have a lot more choices for our support services. You want to move on, Dr. Baker? So we've been talking, of course, throughout the last several years with our diversity and equity committees, and with all the conversations about that, with culturally responsive practice. And, you know, I know the board knows this, the key to that is building those relationships and really getting to know the children and allowing for collaborative learning and really building trusting, meaningful relationships. Again, our classroom teachers do an amazing job of doing this with half the day. I just want us to picture what could be happening if we were in the full day. Really putting in those mindsets, those positive mindsets, beginning to build the independence, really building in habits of mind, and having those authentic and developmentally appropriate learning opportunities like project-based learning, personalized learning, really being able to get at what kids need, who they are, and get to know them even deeper. Purposeful play and inquiry, all of those are, tenets of early childhood education, and we do the best that we can to fit those in. But I dream of a day when our teachers will have the full day to be able to engage with their kids and really know those kids and their families, being able to bring them, into what we do here in Brighton even more fully than they can now. And then other benefits, really thinking about kindergarten as the first opportunity of learning how to be a student. What does it mean to be in school? Taking the time to learn those routines, exploration, inquiry, the technology integration. We're very excited about the, one-to-one iPad use. In our current program, there's not a lot of time to be, the teachers do a great job, again, integrating, but even further development of that. And we have several programs that we have currently purchased and are using that are meant for full day. And we are tapering it down. Some examples, the Everyday Math program, Handwriting Without Tears. We are picking and choosing from those. And I think doing our very best, and kids are coming out with a great experience. But I imagine this day that we will be able to have a world-class kindergarten program that is deserving of all of our students and deserving of our current staff. And we're excited for that day, and just wanted to remind you of why we're doing what we're doing. So any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Baker and Mr. Tappan. I think it's just so exciting to take a look and at all the possibilities of what a full day program is going to bring. So we do appreciate that update. And I do remind folks who are watching us either this evening on live stream, or if you're watching the broadcast through our YouTube channel later in the archive, all of the material that we're discussing and is being presented is available on our website, on the district website under Board of Education, Meetings and Agendas. So that presentation that was just shared and all the additional materials for this evening and every board meeting are posted on there ahead of time. So we just wanted to make sure to remind folks that you can access that at your leisure also. Any other questions from the board on what we've just seen from presentation this evening? Thank you very much. Much more to come on this one, which is sort of the theme of everything, I would say. Next up this evening, we are, Mr. Alimo is going to present a budget discussion, budget review of the 2021-22 budget process. Again, this is something that we talk about almost every meeting, the budget process being a year-round process. But beginning with this evening's presentation that Lou will deliver here shortly, you'll begin to see much more detail as we roll out the entirety of the process that will end up and result in a budget that we will present to the community for their approval later in May. So, Mr. Alimo, I turn it over to you.
I'm going to kick things off, actually, Mr. Kikanovich. No, we misled you. We misled you with that, but not with this. Okay. So there's a method to this madness, so to speak. The full day K overview, and thank you very much to Matt and Debbie for doing such a great job of articulating that, was essential to talk about first, because now we say, how in the world will we pay for it? And what does that mean to everything else, right? So this is meant to dovetail into then the additional conversation with the blueprint updates for people to understand what they could possibly have for the resources they can provide us, what that means right now in the big picture, and then what is currently happening in the district relative to the blueprint updates that is supported by this year's plan and, of course, spending plans going forward. So I'm going to kick this off with a few introductory slides. Mr. Lima is going to dig further into the analysis and be far smarter about it, and then I'll finish off at the end about the kind of last piece that then moves into the blueprint. As you know, and we talk about every year in the budget process, we take a look at our needs and assess those. That's very much a part of what we just discussed in terms of full day kindergarten, because we're identifying issues, designing plans as one that was just presented to you, one very solid way to look at this process. We determine our financial capabilities, which is what we're showing you right now. We revise those plans. Heads up, Mr. Tapp and Dr. Baker, we revise those plans possibly based on what we can spend or what we don't have. And we look at the results once something is implemented to determine whether or not we need to supplement that and think about that a little bit differently. You set the budget guidelines back in the fall, and really we looked at these in a few different areas. The highlights in red are a little bit more of the updates and the differences from previous years. So in other words, we talked about updating the use of one-time revenue, thinking about future years, how we make sure that we have sustaining revenues. This is the first year where instead of using the normal appropriation from fund balance, we talked to you about the idea that we would use additional reserves to hold off on any of the potential reductions from the state to 20%. We're still worried about transportation aid that the state has not clarified yet whether they'll pay or not, and potential reductions depending on what happens with the federal government and their ability to support an additional stimulus package that could go to local government, schools being one of those. And so we talked about being able to use reserves. It's rainy day, use rainy day funds, but then thinking about the longer term, how do we replace those revenues? If you pay the mortgage with your savings account, at some point, you better be able to either see an increase in revenue so you don't have to use your savings account, or replenish the money in your savings account to be able to use it as a revenue going forward. And at the bottom, prudently plan for the implementation of a full day kindergarten program and think about the debt service impact of the 2017 Brighton Facilities Improvement Plan. So we have done that prudent plan for the implementation as was just presented to you. And finally, among our guidelines to comply with the New York State property tax cap and understand its long-term effect on financial planning. And we'll have some updates on that tonight as well. The state has released their growth factor, which impacts our modeling and our predictions of what the cap will look like this year and then, of course, going forward. In terms of activities and the types of things we're doing, we talked to you, of course, about those budget guidelines back in September. The preliminary blueprint recommendations and items are part of that update that we would have started with in January if they were budget dependent. But now, as we're looking at this later in the month of January, of course, we're giving enrollment projections and the preliminary expenditures. This is very much the start. We're going to repeat this multiple times. This is just the start of the spending plan, where we are right now with what we know right now, but that will change dramatically over time and then need to be compared to the revenues and our ability to support that potential spending. We'll do a budget review with you and ask you to approve the tax cap levy limit, all prescribed by formula, of course, but you have to take official action on that at the end of February. And on March 3rd, we'll have a community budget forum. Important to point out, without going through each one of these next steps that you're very familiar with, at that March 3rd meeting, we're also going to be sharing community feedback. We'll be launching a thought exchange about the budget on February 12th. And we'll give people a couple weeks and then we'll present the community feedback on March 3rd at the first community budget forum and use that feedback with some focus groups during those community budget forums. There's 2 of them to really get a better sense for how the community feels about potential impact of the budget, potential programs, potential reductions, et cetera. All a little bit off, but I want to make sure you know what's coming as well. So what do we know right now and what things do we have to assess? Of course, on the left-hand side, it's the what we know now. We have greater staffing demands because of student needs. This comes up every year. Increased demand for special education services. We have contractual labor increases that we know about already. We have recruitment, retention pressures to make sure we maintain an excellent staff and we can recruit an excellent staff. And that, of course, has a cost to it. Increased demand for specialized transportation for particular students. We know that the pension contribution will increase as well. And we're estimating our health insurance rates to increase at least 8.5%. We also have a multiple year impact of that capital project, again, approved by voters in 2017. But we need to keep in mind what that impact is, that increase in debt service over time, and how that measures up with increases in aid for that expenditure. And then the implementation of full day kindergarten. We're going to repeat this to you multiple times, but everything that was presented to you about the program previously by Mr. Tappan and Dr. Baker and what could be so powerful was paid for in the sense that we had accumulated over time the positions in the budget to be able to support that without a spike in cost in one year. However, last spring, as a measure due to pandemic and due to exceptional difficulties from the state in terms of revenue, we needed to utilize what had been progressively planned for to keep programs that we had in place currently. And so that now has disappeared. So we would need to raise that expense in the fund to pay for the implementation of full day K, largely from scratch, because we had to use that again, what had been there, to avoid cutting any other current programs. What are the other factors that we have to assess at this point? Changes in student services and education plans, what our student needs are, requirements of different learning models. This is really tricky. We have a lot of people asking us about what's going to happen in September. What do you think is going to happen relative to COVID? Well, we don't know. We don't really know much more than anybody else. We can do some predicting based on what we think might happen. One thing we've certainly learned about the pandemic is just about anything people think will happen has happened differently from what we thought. So we want to make sure we maintain some flexibility in our plan so we can support whatever comes in September and whatever changes might be required and additional costs around that as well. We have to think about student elective demands. What do our kids need going into next year? And that could be impacted by what they could or couldn't get this year, of course, as well. Changes in state and federal aids, which we're still trying to sort through what the governor said in his proposal today, and we'll look for runs aligned with those proposals and get a better understanding of that. The state economic crisis has a lot to do with what will be available in terms of revenue. We'll be looking carefully at what the state does in terms of revenue raisers and how they decide to bring in more income to the state. We're already talking to our elected representatives and have been now for a while about the impact to our district and what we desperately need and the help we need relative to foundation aid. Sustainability of federal bailouts is awfully important to understand that although there may be bailout money this year, we can keep program maybe for another year or implement program, but what does it mean when we take on a new expense like full day kindergarten? How do we support that long term? And we need to make sure there's sustainability in the spending plan too. Use that analogy again for making sure there's enough money in the savings account. If we're going to pull money out to spend on something, to spend on a recurring bill, you need to find a way to make sure you can support that. Use of one-time application of the fund balance and reserves and being able to supplant that recurring reliable revenues is the more intelligent or wordy way to say what I just said around the mortgage payment. Couple of quick slides on our enrollment before I turn more in-depth analysis over to Mr. Alimo. What we are starting with in terms of our open enrollment and what the differences were this year and how that's worked. Remember, we lost students for a variety of factors, but we believe probably having a lot to do with the pandemic and people choosing a lot of different options for their kids. We had 50 less students expected. This is the right-hand column of the chart or table on the left-hand side. At kindergarten, 16 first, 2 at second. Total of 78 less students at Council Rock, 44 French Road, 9 at the middle school, and 4 additional students at BHS. And Dr. Hall looked for 4 staff members to cover those 4 kids. No, I'm just kidding. But we did have 4 additional students at the high school. And on the right-hand side, of course, we talked about our enrollment forecast going forward. So we're trying to figure out what does that mean in terms of the students lost. And this is one of those being prepared for anything and trying to understand pandemic decision-making. And depending on what we are able to offer in September, what does school look like when we come back? Do all of those students come back to us, or will some stay in the places that they went? We're trying to figure out those models and get a better understanding of that, in addition to thinking about what it means if we then have full day kindergarten. That's illustrated well on the right-hand side as you look at the kindergarten number this year being 136 and thinking about kids that would come to us now, given that it will be a full day kindergarten program and not be leaving for full day somewhere else due to pandemic or just a full day opportunity in another place. And in first grade, that number 136, we would expect to jump to 237 next year. We normally get a bump from kids coming to us now for the full day of first grade who otherwise went to another provider for kindergarten who are full day. And then kids that we expect would likely come back post-pandemic if there was a 5-day-a-week program. You can also notice the yellow highlights would be a bubble then that we would see go through, similar to other bubbles we have currently who have now made it through all the way through in the high school level. We'd be looking at that group being pretty large based on the normal bumps that we see, migration back to our system or at different grade levels, and we'll want to keep an eye on that as well. Likewise, we're taking a look at what does that mean for French Road and potential numbers there. Currently, we have 267 kids in 5th grade, and we're thinking that may be around 240 going into next year. So just taking a look at what those numbers may be is important to our process. And we can see the subtotals on the bottom. We would expect to be back up next year to 3519 from where we are at 3378 currently. Elementary class size is something that is always important to people, and they take a look at. Right now, based on the number of positions we're predicting budgeting for, we'd be looking at a class size of 19 in the full day kindergarten and right around 21 in each of the other K through 5 grade levels. We would always like that to be as small as possible. Relatively, I would say reasonable numbers for sure. Not as big as they could be, but not as small as we would always love them to be, but certainly reasonable given the current context. And then you can see the analysis on the right-hand side. If we were to add a teacher or take a teacher away, what that would mean in terms of class size. Something we'll need to keep an eye on as we go through the budget process. Financial trends. And with that, I know where to stay in my lane and ask Mr. Alamo to jump in and begin his analysis for you.
Sure, just looking at some trends going forward. And one of the key things that the Board of Education monitors on a regular basis is the gap between the average increase in the budget and the actual expenditures. And we try to manage that over the years. You could see in 2017-18 where we reinvested it in the capital, but generally just sets the tone of where we've been heading. And it serves the purpose of just an analytic and a reasonableness test as we roll things forward. One of the key points, and to piggyback off what Dr. McGowan said, the investment and the use of current fund balance, current budget is $3 million. If we were to increase that over time, then we need to make sure that we could supplant that with one of the other primary revenues that are shown on the next slide that gives a trends of our reliance on local revenues versus state and federal sources. Kevin, it would be on the next slide. Sorry. Thank you. So it just gives you a sense. I did not in this presentation try to estimate or guess what the governor is going to do in his executive budget. We'll analyze that at the next budget meeting when we see the runs. But we're not optimistic about what we're going to see. We expect that he will use federal money to supplant what otherwise would be state contributions. And then there's not a lot of growth opportunity in some of the other local sources. You could see sales tax is probably what grows at the greatest rate as a revenue source, and the reimbursement categorical aids, what they'll do in the state budget to either honor those formulas or amend those formulas. So what we want to show is try to show things in a consistent way that we show the Board of Education our budget to actual projections on a monthly basis. So looking at the groupings of expense at the object level, and you can see that salaries and benefits, related benefits, are 71% of our budget. The BOCES expenditures and services are 10%. Capital is an increasing component at 5%, and then all the other supplies and services. So we show this to show the magnitude of areas as we look at programs and services, again, as a percentage of total spending, what that actual reduction or change may be relative to the larger scale. So looking at the working budget assumptions, Dr. McGowan gave the kind of the macro. These are some of the assumptions that I plugged into the spreadsheet to build what is just a preliminary budget. And it's again, based on things that we know right now, trends that we're looking at over the last couple of years, and other factors that are considered. So the salaries and wages, what we do is we do not look at budget to actual. We look at our current staffing levels. And so we essentially zero-based budgeting based on our current staffing, and we roll that forward based on the labor assumptions, whether it's contractual rate, whether it's other adjustments, overtime, summer days. We try to build that based on experiences. And then the related benefits to that, a lot of them are a percentage of the salary. So as those go up, we know that pension contributions are going to go up, for instance. And we look at FTEs, and we look at our participation in health insurance. And then everything else, we apply what we think are inflationary or contractual adjustments. So if we go into that, then our budget, preliminary budget, again, this is based on a very high level analytic of those object level classifications. Preliminarily, we're looking at a 4.7% increase in operations, $1.7 million increase or 2.1% in capital. So a 6.5% increase in total spending. That's an increase of spending of $5.4 million. And again, consistent with how we present to the Board of Education on a monthly basis, the object classifications, salaries and wages, 4.5%, employee benefits, 6.1%, again, kind of based on our budget to actual, and rolling those forward there. And the next couple of slides provide an analytic of those areas, a little bit deeper dive into each of the areas. So looking at salaries and benefits, we look at administrative salaries, for instance, 3% of the budget. We had some breakage over the last 2 years, and we've caught up with that. So we're seeing a decrease in administrative spending, reinstating the assistant principal position, at the high school. We're still realizing some breakage and savings there. Teaching and supervision, $1.4 million or 5%. And you can see at the notes at the bottom, what I'm looking at is the contractual adjustments and then the salary increase for full day kindergarten and the respective percentages there and the related benefit costs using our federal reporting, and the ESSA benefit rate is 47%. And then you look at our non-certificated staff, again, some additions for full day K, but more as a percentage labor increases as we've responded to minimum wage over the last couple of years. On the health insurance end, rolling forward where we are right now, we benefited from some surplus in that area, closing that gap. So you only see health insurance increasing at 7.2%, and retirement will go up again proportionally with salaries, and then the rates are going up as well. Thank you. Looking at BOCES, 9 to 10% of our budget, you could see what the increases are. This is where I've applied contractual increases and added resources for very specific business needs, particularly in the business technology service. We are responding to new rules in cybersecurity, data security. There's the SHIELD Act and there's EdLaw 2D. So we are looking at a platform to be able to meet those mandates, really unfunded mandates, but they are legitimate business risks where we need an infusion of additional resources and dedicated cybersecurity contract to provide it. That's close to $100,000. Everything else we're trying to maintain flat allocations. Under the general education, professional development, building in all of our instructional programs, that's representative of contractual increase passed on through BOCES. Deanna Spagnola and Jill Milliman have done an excellent job looking at our special education programs and forecasting placements going into next year. We have a couple of students that are graduating or matriculating out of services, so we see some savings there. Occupational education is based on our current enrollment, but again, that's a mandated program, so we may have students, more students participate in that than we have this year. So that is a risk item at about $10,000 for tuition. In instructional technology, this year in response to the COVID pandemic, we essentially ripped off the Band-Aid and we're a one-to-one district. That's going to require more cash in the general fund, less reliance on our capital reserve going forward. We need to build in that infrastructure and the repair replacement reserve for that one-to-one program. Thank you. And supplies and services, again, consistent with how we presented to the Board of Education, you can see some of the big ticket items in here. Trying to project increase in square footage from the capital project with utilities and custodial. And special education contracts and tuitions, those are more outside private placements, looking at growth in that area. Contract transportation is a CPI adjustment, which you see is about 1.5%, and then additional costs for the full day K program, which is equivalent to 3 buses, less the midday runs that would be going away. Everything else is just kind of rolling forward where I think we are this year, and inflationary adjustments. So debt service, a growing part of our budget. You could see this year we are relying on fund balances this year to balance the budget. Next year we will have one more jump to achieve stability in the impact on the property tax levy. So that's why you'll see in the property tax cap calculation one more bump above the inflation adjustment of 1.23% to build in that base, and then we have stability going in the out years of the project. So impact of full day K, I talked to the salary and the benefit piece of it in 21-22. There are going to be some implementation costs and then ongoing instructional supply costs that are assumed to be equivalent to our per pupil spending. And then the net impact of transportation costs. So estimated increase of that, of the $5 million increase, $1.5 million is approximately attributable to full day K. The revenue sources that help finance that, there is conversion aid, which is a per pupil allocation. The 2021-22 allocation would be about $905,000. And then subsequent year, it would be 65% of that and 35% of that. So year 2, then we would have some transportation aid as a reimbursable aid, and then that would continue going forward. So the net impact on the levy then, that bottom line, first year is about $570,000. It's equivalent to about 1% of the tax cap. And then we would looking at levy impacts the next year and the growth in that levy base going forward. So from year 1 to year 2 of a full day K program, 570,000 to 779,000, that would impact next year's tax cap 0.4%, then 0.6% in the respective out year. So we always got to look at how much taxes will we need to levy as the revenue sources are falling off and the funding cliffs, the inherent funding cliffs are realized. So with that, looking at the tax cap calculation, and this is, I apologize for the small print, but you can get a sense of the complexity of the formula going forward. It's not a 2% tax cap. There are multiple factors that are included in that formula. So if you look at the 2022 column, you can see what our starting levy is, and then the factors there. So we have a tax-based growth factor, which is pretty negligible in Brighton. We do not have increasing property growth. And then we have what I've circled there is the allowable growth factor of 1.23%. So that would allow for, just that factor alone would allow for 683,000 or a 0.8% increase in spending compared to the 4.7% that I'm preliminarily projecting for increases. So not a lot of money coming from property tax cap, puts us even more reliant on state and federal sources to meet ongoing recurring operating expenses. And then you have the impact of the capital project. So next year, our levy obligation would be about $1.9 million. This year, it was just over $1 million. So that's where you see the increase in the property tax cap going up to 3.04%. Now that's subject to change as we learn more, but this is at least our starting point for the tax cap calculation. And then you can see what, again, as the capital project stabilizes, we see that it's about 2% going forward with the assumption of the allowable growth factor to stay less than 2% over the next couple of years. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. McGowan.
Thanks very much, Lou. Appreciate that and the analysis. So really now it's about what the next steps are. We'll keep an eye on the budget to actual projections. Interesting year, especially doing that given the just totally different set of variables that we're dealing with in terms of what has or has not been spent during this year, where we've had to spend other places, how we've had to reallocate to different areas, and what that means going forward will certainly be part of our analysis and information we provide to you as well. We'll collaborate with our building principals and department managers to take a look at places we can be more efficient. We do that every single year. Look at the spending in the current year and opportunities to do it for less going forward and be better wherever we can. And then we'll take a look at cost reduction strategies as well and the impact of potential reduction to program. That's an important part of this process. We'll develop a community thought exchange to launch on February 12th and review the results of the community on March 3rd. And then we'll continue our advocacy efforts, working with our legislators to try and correct this issue and take a look at foundation aid, excuse me, and mandate relief and what that means for us long-term and how that can support the programs and the excellence here at Brighton, which you are about to hear about in terms of blueprint updates. And that's the transition to the next piece, which is so important. Certainly after we answer any questions from the board about what exactly then does this support and what kind of work does this support here in the district. Mr. Kekanovich.
Thank you very much, Dr. McGowan and Mr. Limo. Board members, any specific questions with regard to the budget review presentation this evening? certainly not new news to us. We've had the report and we've been discussing so many of these factors. Lots more to come. We'll have a lot more discussion around specifics and individual items. I would make a further note just for the community who may be paying attention to us right now. You know, you both touched on it, but one of the elements that makes things even more difficult this year is the pandemic operation of our state government and our governor's current operation under executive orders and the effect on the governor's budget process, if you will. Because for those that have paid attention to this in Brighton, and we have a huge group of citizens who do pay attention, you know, the budget in New York State is pretty much held in the hands of the governor in terms of what he's able to do, what he includes, what he doesn't include, and even legislation and regulation to go along with actual dollar amounts. And we've dealt with that, you know, forever. This year, today, the governor presented a budget, but he didn't really present a budget. What he did was he discussed a bit of a macro level about where we are revenue-wise. The actual revenue flow into New York State is better than was projected. Still a huge hole, but not as bad as they thought. But he talked a lot today about what would happen depending upon the amount of money that flows to New York from the federal government under the new incoming Biden administration. And the governor talked about, you know, a $6 billion number versus a $15 billion number. And obviously, if it was a $15 billion amount of money that flowed to New York, he talked about holding education aid whole, whatever that means, his terminology. But the point is this: we really are at a bit of a standstill in terms of the work that's been done, the work that Lou continues to do, that work that we all continue to do will continue. But until we know from the governor what education aid looks like, it's very difficult. We sort of have to plan for a few different scenarios. We do anticipate under this administration in Washington that states, local governments, school districts will be in a better position than we have been the last 2 years especially. So we're looking forward to that, but much, much more to come. I guess I just want to make sure the public understands that point where we are right now.
So that was the ugly and the bad. Now let's go to the good. It's out of order, but let's talk about the blueprint updates now. And I'm sorry, which one? Because Dr. Baker, Mr. Limo.
Dana's going to be sharing. So if you could give her the rights, she's got the presentation pulled up.
You're all set, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. And Debbie, I think you're going first.
I am. So if you'll just advance to the first slide, Deanna, it really, as the Board of Education and again, community will recognize that tonight our goal is to really give you progress updates. I think back in November, we presented to the board kind of our goals and action plans for the year. And tonight is just kind of that progress check, if you will. So the first long-term goal, or the first goal that I have, is really centered around our curriculum practices with, as you see here, the long-term goal to be developing and incorporating culturally responsive curriculum and teaching practices across all of our classrooms. This has been a work of Curriculum Council for a couple of years now, and this year we have engaged partners from the New York University Steinhardt School, their Metro Center, to help us think really critically and create ultimately a tool to help us vet our curriculum, to really think about what are those criteria, what are those elements that we need to make sure that we are including to make sure that we are inclusive to all of our students. With that being said, I'm going to go a little bit off script, only because I know that there's been a few news stories in the lately, like in the last week or so, about a project that is being spearheaded through, actually in response to a call to action from our county superintendents, but spearheaded through the University of Rochester and Monroe 1 and Monroe 2 BOCES, which is asking or tasking the school districts to create anti-racist, anti-bias curriculum for students in grades 8, 11, and 12. And the questions that I know I'm getting, as well as some of our Board of Education members and administrators, is Brighton participating in that? And I just want to assure you, absolutely we are. We have a representative, one of our teachers from the high school, who is actively involved in writing those units of study, but also sharing those at our middle school level. In addition, and again, I'm not going to go into too many details, but we have actively been shifting curriculum over the last couple of years, and hopefully within the next month or so, by the end of the month, be able to share more with the community kind of what representative samples or exemplars of that are. But back through the work of Curriculum Council this year, this goal is really to ensure that we have representative curriculum at all of our grade levels, and that all of our teachers feel very confident and comfortable teaching that. In addition, within this work, we can see that, as I mentioned earlier, it's reflecting the work that we have on the website, making sure that we're really sharing out some of the great things that are happening in service to building equitable practices across our district. And then that also includes at the K-5 level, thinking about our social skills curriculum and specific second steps, and how can we build lessons of anti-racist, anti-bias in that. And I know Allison has worked with her counseling staff, and Matt has started to work with his counseling staff to embed those lessons and make sure that that gets taught with our youngest grades. Dan, if you want to move to the next slide. In the area of family engagement, one of the goals that we are working on is about building partnerships between our parents and community, and making sure that our anti-biased, anti-racist, those A-bar goals, if you will, are being met. Part of that work is to really think about our communication with our families. COVID actually provided us with a really good opportunity to kind of step back and evaluate, how are our parents receiving information? What was the best way for them to receive the information? And were there ways that we can make it easier for them so that communication happens rather than this kind of inundation of information, if you will? And so we've worked with the principals to kind of streamline that, along with Dan Goldman, to streamline our communication processes, thinking about, how are we communicating, making sure that we're maximizing print-based materials. Obviously, as I just mentioned a couple of times, that our website is really reflective of the work that we're doing. And then working in partnership with the PTSA like we've never done before when it comes to having a web presence and making sure that our website is informative, if you will, to our parents, whether or not you're new to the community or you've been here for a while, making sure that if you need information, that it's readily accessible for you. And then the last area, Deanna, if you want to move forward, really again continues with family engagement and really focusing our families that are new to the district. Last year, we had an opportunity in the family engagement group to poll or to survey our new families to find out what were we doing well, but more importantly, what could we do differently? And some of the action items that came out of that was around creating a virtual orientation, if you will. So again, kind of just in time so that parents could access this information on their own in case, they weren't able to make it to the building orientations, or they really just were trying to get to know an individual building and what opportunities it afforded their children. And so from a progress standpoint, right now, I'm working with the principals as well as the committee to identify what would those elements be in a virtual orientation, if you will. In addition, we are working with Deanna's office, the Office of Student Services, to communicate out with our new families. Again, we'll be administering our survey to see what any of our efforts have made a difference, and then starting to see about what we need to do to move forward to really assist them in acclimating to the community so that they feel like they belong and that they're glad to be here. So with that, that's the work that my groups are doing. And I believe the next slide is turning it over to Lou.
Great. Thanks, Ken. So the hiring practices committee, subcommittee, and work, we've been focused on three: the diversification of our faculty and staff, and at the same time building our cultural competence and looking at environmental factors and retention programs. This year, we're taking every opportunity with recruitment, executing the playbook that has been developed over the last couple of years in partnership with community representatives from across different industries, trying to take the best practices from outside of the K-12 arena, to execute a recruitment effort. This year, leveraging off of the great work that Debbie and her groups have done, I've been very fortunate to partner with the Brighton Teacher Center and Maria Mauricio, and she's joining us this evening to offer her perspective and her thoughts on how we could infuse long-term and build long-term capacity in building cultural competence. First, I'm going to talk about the short-term and immediate step from an HR perspective of providing that training. So the short-term and the long-term goals, I'm addressing the short-term strategy from a human resources perspective. So one of the things that our principals have dedicated starting in January faculty meeting and each faculty meeting thereafter this year will be commitment to diversity, equity training, and building cultural competence. We have established a corporate partnership with EverFi, and this is a slide from one of their promotional materials, just to give the Board of Education and the community a sense of our commitment to infusing the same level of training and setting the same tone and expectations like we did with sexual harassment over the last few years. We want everyone to know our position on it. We want everyone to know what our expectations and bring awareness in the spirit of growing cultural competence. So this is a training program that we've purchased. You can see the topics that are covered. We are going to be doing this as a team, collaborative team at faculty meeting times. Our principals, will be facilitating that and then facilitating the discussion. And that's where, as Maria will share, that's where the learning happens and that's where the growth comes. So you can get a sense of what we're doing in the short term and what we're committed to. And then I would turn it over to Maria to share her thoughts on how we're leveraging current systems. And this is where, I'm kicking myself a little bit. We've missed the opportunity in partnering with the Brighton Teacher Center these last 2 years and piggybacking off the work that she's been doing on the curriculum. So she's here to offer her thoughts on how we can operationalize this in partnership with human resource practices.
Hi, so good evening, everybody. So Diana, do you have the PowerPoint? Okay. So the first thing is on becoming a culturally competent individual, we have to think about the development of specific skills and dispositions. And we need to think about skills as ways to perform tasks with a certain degree of expertise, and disposition as inclinations or tendencies that humans develop to behave in specific ways. So basically, we're talking about internalized behaviors acquired over time. So in thinking about the hiring practices and when someone comes to the district, the idea is that not just those who are new to the district, but all members of our community acquire 4 competencies, which are to understand the socio-political context in which the organization exists, related to diversity, identity, and privilege. The other one is adapt and modify the practices to meet the needs of students, staff, and members of the community from all backgrounds. The third competency is analyze and understand the systems that marginalize members of the organization and the community to eradicate inequity. The other one is advocate for equitable access and opportunities for all. We need to understand that this is an iterative process of reflection, assessment, and alignment, woven to our aspirations, which affect beliefs, practices, and settings. Let's move to the next slide, please. So that being said, we need to move towards a sustainable cultural competent model. And as a learning system, we need to think that change happens over time, is a journey. And sustainability depends on our ability to adapt the resources and structures of support in place and build upon those resources that we have, modify those that do not work, and add what is necessary to sustain a culturally responsive environment. So Lou just shared this great work with EverFi, which will be for all staff in the members, and then which will establish, basically established by regulations, and that will be yearly. Also, the idea will be to engage on reflection, all the staff members and all the community of the organization to reflect about these practices. So remember, we're a learning system and we need to move forward. This is a journey of change. Another aspect of this to sustain and maintain this cultural competent model will be to have a group of volunteers that are advocates and allies, and then develop that training. In the district, we have, for decades, we have had an induction program, and all teachers come and they are part, they work with a mentor. Also, the teaching assistants work with a mentor. And then the idea will be to engage the clerical support in a mentoring program. So as you see, there are like a way to do it over time, sustain it. And the last piece of this work, can you move to the next slide, please? Is to think about, okay, I'm sorry, here are kind of a little bit of a model of the mentoring, how to develop cultural competence and the supports that are offered to all the members of the community over a period of time. And the last piece, as I was going to say, Diana, can you go to the next one, please? Is the last piece is that we enter the assessment piece, which over time we have to think about a district-wide climate questionnaire, in which what we do is we evaluate the transformation or the growth over time. We have to transform the new teacher survey as they exit the program to see how that journey has supported the work and the understanding of the culture. The same thing for the teaching assistants. Also important, which is pretty much connected to the Learning Spaces program, is building walkthroughs with an assessment tool that is being developed right now to look at how those shifts in the pedagogical practices and support culturally responsive environments. And also building level focus groups and interviews will be kind of a way to move on the assessment, which is something done as a team that collaborates towards meeting the dreams and aspirations that we have for our children and our community related to equity and diversity in the district.
Maria, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate your partnership and walking us through this. Thank you.
And I'll jump in from here. The other committee, subcommittee is the Student Engagement Group, a new group this year. As some of you may recall, last year there was the Special Education Subcommittee and had spent the last 2 years developing an RTI checklist that as parent Sally Bond was able to make mention just last week, COVID, she was spot on with the analysis that COVID really put a pause in that. And we are rolling that out now in buildings to examine how we look at student need. But moving forward, we have many members of the Special Education Committee on this subcommittee on the Student Engagement Group, who this year have been charged with looking at potential barriers for our students to extracurricular activities. So since we began the school year, we took a look at what are and what aren't extracurricular activities and different things that are available here in Brighton. But we really are now focusing on the nuts and bolts of what is it we want to find out and what is it we want to know. Our last meeting, groups got together in breakout sessions to really start to formulate what are priorities for a survey that will be developed. Next week on January 27th, an even smaller group is coming together to actually come together to form the questions and put that in place. Globally, we looked at talking about what types of questions did we want to ask, who were the targeted population, all students, all parents, and staff will be having the opportunity to participate in the survey. Principals have committed to allowing time at grades 3 through 12 for students to complete the survey within the school day, so we can ensure the greatest amount of access to our students to be able to complete the survey. We've talked about the difference between an online version, a paper pencil, those making sure that, again, everyone has the opportunity to complete the survey. Folks have asked questions along the lines of making sure that the purpose is very clear to students. We also want to make sure that the current learning environment that has been hampered by the COVID situation at this point doesn't sway or skew any of the data that we might be looking at. People wanting to make sure that the survey is succinct, especially if it's given within the school day, to not interrupt instruction, but also being mindful of the fact that if it goes on too long, students may be less inclined to answer completely, answer fully. We don't want them to feel rushed in their thought process. People have asked questions like including past alumni for their perspective on participation, or what maybe hampered their participation from engaging in extracurricular activities. Asking students if they participate in something outside of a Brighton Central School District sponsored event or activity or club, and why or why not would they not engage in that, possibly within the school district or one that's before or after school. People were very, very thoughtful, asked a great deal of questions that pushed one another, made people think in different ways. The team was committed to making sure that we pulled together a survey that could be done hopefully before the end of February, so we could review and look at the data. And most importantly, people were, in terms of thinking about questions, they wanted to make sure that while we may have assumptions, this information, the survey, is to help us think about those barriers that we may not even thought of, new assumptions we hadn't even considered. So I'm very thankful to those who volunteered to put together the questions for us next week, and I'll be excited on February 4th to bring that back to our larger group so we can even develop that further. And I'll turn it over to Betsy Balling, who's going to take over for mental health and wellness.
Good evening, everybody. I'm very excited to be here and to have the opportunity to talk to you about our wellness suite of resources. I owe a great deal to the District Wellness Committee. They worked very, very hard in the last few meetings, and we were able to come up with 2 different wellness suites. So we have one for students and families, and we also have one for faculty and staff. So the one for students and families, we unveiled it on December 16th. It is located on the BCSD homepage under wellness. So it's got its own little tab. It includes the purpose of the resource. We thought it was really important to lay out why this is available to people, and that if there is something bigger going on, that this isn't the resource to go to, but there's other places for help. We also added links to the individual buildings counseling department websites, which all have appropriately developmental levels of different things, by school. And we thought that that was great to bring it to the attention of people. For the students and families, we broke the wellness suite into 2 different sections. So there's an ages 4 to 12, and then one that's 12 to adult. And they include meditation, journaling and coloring, yoga, visual relaxation, and other resources. And I wanted to add that this is a work in progress, and Dan Goldman and Janice Mix were very instrumental in helping to get this up and running. Since December 16th, we've had approximately 375 people access the wellness suite. And just before the holidays, kind of exciting was that Channel 8 picked this up as a good news item. And I also know that teachers have been using it with their classes as well. Next slide, please. So for faculty and staff, this was really in response to the fact that our faculty and staff is experiencing this pandemic too, and it has been incredibly stressful. And we know that because we asked, and we thought, what can we do for them that isn't adding a ton onto their plate? So similar to the one for students and families, this is located on the website under the staff portal. And it also has similar resources that it does for the families, but they have more that are specific to educators. So there's a column for meditation, exercise, inspiration, articles, and apps. This is also a work in progress. And I know that the teachers have been very grateful. I should say the faculty's been grateful. They've reached out and said how much they do appreciate this. And we want to continue to add to this as we go on throughout the year. Next slide, please. So as far as restorative practice and SEL across the district, there are so many different things going on. At Council Rock, classrooms are using circles to problem solve situations as needed. So they're using the skills that the teachers learned when we rolled out restorative practices, and they're still using the circle format to solve problems. Teachers are using the circle format on Zoom. We use that a lot in different meetings in general, and they're also including other classroom staff members to be parts of those conversations. And I was also able to find out that speech language teachers are utilizing SEL to build connections in their groups, and these are all groups that are strictly remote. FRES is doing a ton. So first of all, time was built in this year for class meetings and community building circles in classrooms. And this is time that can be used by both mental health staff and teachers. In grades 3 and 4, second step lessons are being delivered, and also the teaching tolerance lessons that Debbie had alluded to before. So talking about acceptance, valuing differences, things of that nature. Grade 5, they'll be rolling out the teaching tolerance lessons starting in February. And then they also have a couple other really neat things going on. So there's some engaging interactive bulletin boards. So there's a bulletin board full of different Post-its, and it's take what you need. So some of the Post-its, some of the things they might say are hope, or deep breaths, or confidence, be confident. And the kids can take them off the board. And another thing I learned about today, which I thought was really neat, and I haven't seen the video yet, but I heard about it. There's a song by Thomas Rhett called Be a Light. And Marguerite Opet pushed into classrooms and was doing lessons on random acts of kindness and how they can make such a difference. And so then what the students did is they put those acts of kindness on light bulbs, and the light bulbs are around the school. And then Eric Gruner created a video, and the background music is Be a Light by Thomas Rhett. Next slide, please. Other examples of restorative practices and SEL across the district. So for TCMS, the counselors continue to build community in groups, and they are doing this face-to-face, socially distanced, masked. There's been plenty of regular opportunities for staff to meet both in person and after school to build community. They've been running circles that way. And then there's community building circles that take place regularly in the PATH program. I was talking to Meg Goodman, and she continues to do those on a regular basis with her students. And it's just made such a big difference in terms of the students in that class, how they interact with their peers in PATH, but also how they interact with students in the greater building. And then at BHS, I was talking to one of the remote teachers, and they're using the SEL skills that they learned from Mary Beth Elko in the beginning of the school year when she ran a PD for us to build community in their remote sessions. There's the continued use of restorative circles and restorative conversations when there's disciplinary issues at the high school. And then I had the privilege of sitting in a link crew the other day, and we are still doing that at the high school. It's very small groups, they're socially distanced, face-to-face, but talking through some scenarios that were really helpful. And as the conversations get going, you see the connections grow, and it's just so nice to see all of these things continue, even in the different way of doing business. In moving forward, so the Mental Health Steering Committee has been really active and continues to talk about where we're going next with SEL and restorative practices. We know we're not going to be in this pandemic forever, and we want to keep going. So we are having continued conversations with PERI about training opportunities in both restorative conversations and in restorative discipline. As I had mentioned a while ago, the restorative discipline training was supposed to happen face-to-face last year. It didn't. We decided not to go with it on Zoom, but we haven't forgotten about it. We are going to do that eventually. We're trying to come up with plans for the late spring, summer, and fall. So how do we keep these conversations about SEL and restorative practices going? And we want to make sure that we are planful in how we do that. We want to continue to have conversations about building community and connections with teachers. So doing that with restorative practices, SEL, and culturally responsive pedagogy. And I just wanted to connect it back to the Curriculum Council. And I had an opportunity to be part of Curriculum Council just this past week, and seeing the intersectionality between these three things and really experiencing SEL at its best and working with our consultants there from NYU. It's just incredible and how powerful it can be. We continue to research SEL screening tools. We want to make sure that we find the one that is right for our district and for our students, and there are many of them out there. And then we continue to work with BOCES, and I participate regularly in the social emotional learning leaders meetings that we have once a month. Mary Beth Elko continues to be a great resource and someone to work with. And I just am looking so forward to see where we go with all of this work. And I'm so proud of all the people in the district and how well they've moved forward with us.
Fantastic. I think we finished up, I think, with the group, and we appreciate, first of all, thanks to certainly to Debbie, Lou, Deanna, Betsy, and also Maria for joining in. And I think I heard Betsy, this pandemic's not going to be with us forever, so I'm going to the bank with that. I did catch that. But I did want to mention on behalf of the board, long night tonight, a lot of detail. We certainly appreciate that. All of these reports are online and available, as we mentioned. They've been available to us previously. But it's a great portrayal of the fact that we are moving on. There is more than pandemic learning and COVID that our people are dealing with every single day. And all of the work that we have in progress, Dr. McGowan has talked about the blueprint areas and multiple conversations with the town, our residents in town halls and community forums, and that we do certainly have priorities, and priorities change in the immediate, but we have all of this other work, and the board commends our leadership, our staff, everybody that has continued to push forward on great work that has been there in preliminary work, building block work has been done, and we continue to move forward a little bit differently. But as you can see from all the reports this evening, that work does continue and it does move forward. So our appreciation to everybody involved with that. We have a report section this evening to go through. Board members, you have financial reports supplied by Lou Alimo and by our Finance Director, Dahlia Watts. Those include the Executive Budget Status Report for the period ending November 30th, the Treasurer's Report for the period ending November 30th. You'll see from those that we continue to keep track of all of our expenses and where we are, taking stock where we are at this point in time of the year. We have also the single audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2020, and also the extra classroom activity funds and single audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2020. We have all those materials that have previously have been given to us. Do we have any questions? Does anyone have any questions on anything that's contained in there for Lou this evening? Then I would ask for a motion to receive all of those reports, items A 1 through 4, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Larry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That's 6 in favor and none opposed. I don't believe we have our student representative with us this evening, so we'll pass on her report. Board of Education reports, our Monroe County School Boards Association standing committees. As we've discussed, we have moved all of those committees back to Zoom and meeting virtually. Labor Relations meets tomorrow, correct, Larry?
That is correct, tomorrow.
And that is well, I know Larry had sent me a note that said he planned to attend. I don't know if anyone else is attending also, but that is a session tomorrow, Labor Relations Committee on workforce availability. And as you've all seen, topically, information exchange and information exchange and labor relations both have really heavily been influenced by where we are and the topics they've tried to make those germane to the work that we're involved with. Certainly legislative committee, obviously. So that meeting is tomorrow at noon, Larry, on Zoom?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Information exchange was held on January 13th. Julene, I believe
I was there, Sue was there, and Christina was there.
Okay.
And the topic was English language learners. We had two presenters from Rush Henrietta. And, talking not just about the challenge of being an English language learner, but doing it during COVID, and how they've addressed some of those challenges. So it was really very interesting.
I thought too interesting about it were the silver linings that a lot of people are finding. And so, the silver lining in connecting with the English language learners and their families is that, they've been able to do a lot of their interviews using interpreter phones. And it's been a really wonderful resource for them. And with Zoom, they're not only able to communicate with the English language learner student, they're able to meet the entire family and really get a connection to the student's home life, which has been really sort of a nice silver lining. So I sort of like to pick up on that whenever we can. So it was a great presentation.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And thank you for the three of you for attending. We appreciate that. Legislative committee, we met again via Zoom on January 6th. Karen, were you able to join that day?
Yes, I was.
That's right.
I'm thankful we've moved to Zoom because childcare is difficult during a pandemic. One of the things the interesting takeaway for me is that sometimes the mundane pieces during the pandemic become paramount. We talk a lot about bus drivers and the issue of the difficulty in obtaining a commercial driver's license. But as districts are experiencing more absences from workers like bus drivers who make districts run quite literally, the difficulty of finding substitutes just becomes an even larger issue, right? It's one of those behind the scenes things people don't think about. But groups like ours who are working to educate legislators have a lot of work to do to help folks understand how their work making policy can affect us in these ways you don't anticipate. So one of the many focuses that the legislative group has is helping educate our new legislators on all of these issues that sit before us.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And we have so many new folks. And to that end, legislative committee next meets on Thursday, February 4th. We moved the meeting to Thursday from Wednesday because now that the legislature is in session, those folks are in Albany generally Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They normally travel or spend part of the day Thursday returning home and are in their offices here locally Friday through the weekend. So we are going to begin, legislative committee is going to begin meeting. The February 4th legislative committee meeting will be with a large group Zoom with as many of the elected officials from our area as can attend. But then beginning on February 11th, School Boards Association has small group meetings set up that will continue through the middle of March, specific to those members of the Assembly and Senate that represent individual districts. And we'll fill you in more to come on that. But again, the push right now will be to fully fund as much as possible the foundation aid formula, making sure that our local legislators understand that they have work to do. It's not just the governor's show, and we continue to remind them of that and offer some of our assistance and help on that. So much more to come on that work and moving forward. Kevin is directly involved and in touch with our member of Assembly and our member of the Senate. We continue to cultivate that relationship, along with a number of other contacts that we have made in Albany over the years, and we'll continue to do that also to push for funding. The difficulty may be that depending upon what happens with the governor and with federal aid, many of these decisions may not be in their hands. There may be very little that they can do at the end of the day. but we will
It's an
continue to work on that.
interesting place to be, because before it's the New York State government doesn't or won't fully fund the foundation aid formula, and we may well be moving to a place where they just simply can't. Right, it changes everything about how we negotiate, how we inform.
Mhm. Well, it's about choices and priorities, right? Like everything else, like what we work on. So we'll have to see. But you're right, there may be a situation here depending upon, revenue streams from the federal government and what the governor decides to do. So much more to come on that. And we'll continue to update and remind everybody. And we will continue to also ask for assistance where needed in terms of those meetings with individual elected officials. BOCES report, Sora Sachs, our member of BOCES, has submitted a report to us. We'll make sure that's included in the minutes so that you'll be able to read it. But I wanted, because there's a number of items, but I wanted to highlight one item that's interesting. That BOCES, Monroe One BOCES, is hiring a director of diversity and equity, Dr. Tasha Potter, who has been a principal in the Greece School District. She's been heavily involved in diversity, equity, inclusion efforts through her own consulting effort, also with Perry, with a number of other efforts. And she is going to be their director of diversity and equity. The state did approve the coaster on that, so that she will be available for community work for districts and within our communities also. So much more to come on that. We'll talk more about that as a group to see how we might continue to access that going forward. Other board member reports. Are there any other items that individual board members have been involved with since our last report out that you wish to share this evening?
I'll quickly report, Mark. We spent Friday afternoon, myself, Lou, and the facilities team meeting with SWBR and campus construction regarding a long list of change orders that came across on the Council Rock job. Change orders, for those who don't know, are orders that are inconsistent with the plan or work that was not seen. And there's generally a cost to those. So we did a pretty significant deep dive into what drove some of those, getting to the bottom of some things. I do this every single time, but it bears mentioning. Our facilities and buildings team are amazing. John Novelli, just a whole bunch of those folks have just been absolutely fantastic. So more work to do there. We're going to make sure that any penny that gets spent of the taxpayer money is accounted for. But kudos to Lou for setting up that meeting, and to the entire buildings team, Rob Luce. I'm going to leave somebody out, all those guys who were in there sort of protecting us from that standpoint. Campus and SWBR have been doing a good job, but we need to be really tight with what we're doing. So spend some time with Friday on that, and we'll continue to look at that.
Okay, thank you, Larry. And again, thank you for your continued work on that and Lou's attention to that and reporting out. So more to follow. Other board member reports? Somebody have anything you want to share? I will add for a few of us anyway, that last week it was mentioned earlier, Curriculum Council, and we had a fantastic session with Curriculum Council last week. We've talked about this, many of us have talked about our partnership with the NYU Metro Center Steinhardt School and that team that is now working with us in so many ways. And it was just, the session was just perfectly timed, let's say, to the events of the world and the events in our country. And I think everybody that was on that Zoom felt a moment of togetherness and involvement and opening eyes and taking a look at things, and a building of trust and camaraderie around certain things is what I guess I would share. But it was a great session, and I thank you, Debbie, and everybody that continues to be involved in the great work of Curriculum Council and that partnership with the NYU group. And I will make mention this evening, we did set, the board is going to have a retreat early March, largely devoted to work directly with those folks, directly with the Board of Education, and continuing our work with regard to anti-bias, anti-racism work and culturally responsive education. So we look forward to that. So that's what I have to say on that. Does anyone else that was at Curriculum Council want to add anything on that? I don't want to step on anyone's toes. Okay, I see the night is getting late. Next up, our Brighton Teachers Association report. Nicole is here. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll hit the highlights. First, I just have to say, I think that Matt is determined to wear red and blue at every moment. So I'm just going to throw in a Go Bills for Matt because I love my principal. So I will hit the highlights. If you have looked at the report, you have seen that there are a lot of links for you to click on and hopefully enjoy. If you haven't clicked on them, please make sure you do, because there's some great little vignettes from kids in different buildings. At Council Rock, Kathy Banbury's second graders have been working on how to. They wrote How to Be a Friend, and they recorded them and then shared them with the kindergarten classes. So you have 2 links to those, and they're adorable. You also have one of the music teachers, Mrs. Granat, shared a performance that the kids have been working on with the glockenspiels, which I had fun having my kids repeat that to me a few times. But it's amazing. So click on that and watch that. At French Road, the extended studies are so Renee Weedor is starting a space cluster group, and she sent a really fabulous presentation, which hopefully you were able to open. And then some of the many activities that the kids are doing for third. For fourth and fifth, they're doing autobiographies. And I sent you 2 autobiographies that kids did. So I don't know if you were able to watch those, but those were really great. And that's for 4th and 5th grade. Mrs. Harp, they are building tiny houses. And the latest thing they did was to create windows using recycled plastic. Which is just such a cool idea. They had a great conversation about how you use recycled materials when you're doing some new construction. Also, in February, they're going to start lighting their tiny houses and putting in carpeting and furniture. They also did a remote assignment where they examined the utilities that they need to use in a tiny house. And she had a lot of feedback from parents about how much they appreciated the kids understanding what the parents have to do. Building wide, and I think that Betsy talked about this with the Take What You Need board. I hope I got that right, that it was you, Betsy. The Take What You Need board. And I put in maybe 5 or 6 different pictures of that. And Miss Ellis shared that. But it's such a great thing that you can put something on there. You can take what you need. Kids can put it on their locker. They can put it on their desk. They can take it home. And what Miss Ellis wrote was that it's important to recognize what you need, but it's also that other people, other kids might be feeling the same way you are. So really nice, and lots of good photos of that. There were a few photos of what 4th grade students did over their winter break, and they did little snapshots and then wrote about the different things that they did. So what was the best part, what they who they saw, many different things. And I put a few samples up there for you. For 12 Corners, the French, the high school French, and then the grade 8 hybrid and remote classes had a prior student be a Zoom speaker for them. And it happens to be Mrs. Newcomer's niece, who is living in France and is teaching English and American culture in different elementary schools in France. So it was great for her to Zoom with the students at the high school and the middle school, and to make that connection that they can use what they're learning and do some wonderful things. 3 12 Corners teachers, Mrs. Kantz, Mrs. Halligan, and Mrs. Lambert, won a contest about where it's a website that builds communities for new arrivals and new Americans using children's literature. So they won this contest and they received a book called Nowhere Boy, which is about a Syrian refugee who's the son of an American diplomat. And they're going to use it to teach about immigration and allyship in their upcoming classes. So I put a copy of that in there for you. Dr. Fisher's 8th grade band, they've been doing duets, trios, and quartets, and they've chosen their own genres and then their own groups and to perform, and they're recording their parts so that then they can turn it into an ensemble. So that's something very exciting to look forward to. And there's a link in there for that. In Marianne Walters' German class, they participated in the Goethe Institute Digital Wander Bus, which is a 3D space where you can go into Germany and travel to what you want to learn about. So you could learn about culture, you could learn about science, politics. The library club had Daniel Moscow, who I believe is a graduate. Do I have that right? That he was a prior graduate? So the library club had him come and he taught them he went through a coding session with them, and they shared their projects, but there's a nice photograph of him sharing with Mrs. Lambert and the kids who participated. The Mrs. Mule's Orchestra, Dr. Fisher's 8th grade band, did a unit on the 19th Amendment and voting rights. They had debates, they learned about women's suffrage, and then their final project was to perform the International Hymn of the Suffragettes. And they talked about how current events connected to the topic. There's a video for that. At the high school, the DECA kids had to do a virtual participation for the New York State Conference this year. And they had to take an online test and then record themselves. They were given a scenario that they could access for 15 minutes, and then they had a short amount of time to prepare and record their response and submit. 500 kids participated, and I think that they had 500 overall, 20 from Brighton, 10 qualified, and they wanted to give a real shout out to the officers to really help get this organized and make it happen. And there's a nice list of everyone who participated and the ones who made it happen. And that's all I've got. And I'll end with another Go Bills. Got the yes.
Thank you very much, Nicole. And thank you for including, we did notice all the links to all the video and all the inside school building stuff and all the photos. But, you know, we're none of us are in person anymore with the board, and we're not getting in buildings. That means we're not seeing kids and we're not seeing work being done and fun being had. And so thank you very much for including all those in your report. It's really, makes the day a little sunnier, let's put it that way, right? So our PTSA report, Eleanor is with us this evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. As others said, the evening is growing late, and so I will be as brief as possible. TCMS is still looking to plan some virtual activities for the students this winter, as well as the PTSA is working in conjunction with the Brighton Food Cupboard and counselors to try and help families in need in our community to see if there's sort of a way of us reaching out to those families who need us the most. We're also looking for new ideas or creative ideas to help support the teachers in our community during this time right now. So if you do have any brilliant ideas, please feel free to email Sangeeta Patel or myself, and we will pass them along. As well as once we unveil the brand new Brighton Bruins logo going out there, we are looking to do another spirit wear sale in the spring. So please, look for that and help add some more spirit to your wearing collection and join us in that. I think that's about it, other than I will also add with Nicole, go Bills.
Thank you very much. We hope for the Bills, right? Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Dr. McGowan, Superintendent's report.
I'm fairly sure you've heard just about everything you need out of me. I will only say that we are working towards a logo design finalized, Eleanor, by February 1st. And Nate's done a really great job with that working with BSN Sports. Other than that, we're also looking forward to great conversations in our classrooms tomorrow regarding democracy, regarding civil discourse, regarding hope, peacefulness, thoughtfulness. And I know people are sending really great messages about that kind of conversation and celebrating our democracy and a peaceful transition of power. So kudos to them for that. And best wishes to everybody for happiness and health. Continue to keep your masks on, and we continue to monitor closely vaccine developments, which will help everybody stay healthy and safe for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. McGowan. We appreciate that. Board members, we have an item number 10, bids. I'll ask for a motion, please, to approve item number 10, numbers 1, 2, 3, all together, if you will. They're cooperative bids for supplies, so we are certainly entitled to do that. A motion, please, for approval of those 3 bids as listed.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Larry, seconded by Karen. As you've seen there, they're listed cooperative bids for custodial supplies, medical trainer supplies, health and safety supplies. And as we talk about, we work through BOCES 2 purchasing agent and for cooperative bids to serve all Monroe County districts, and that's what these 3 are. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That's 6 in favor and none opposed. And finally, this evening, a motion, please, for approval of our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
That was moved by Sue and seconded by Christina.
Yeah.
And I make one note, the board will be aware of this, but we are approving and accepting tonight a very generous gift from Mr. Jeff Levinson, a Brighton resident, a Brighton alum with a daughter who's a Brighton alum. He has gifted to the Brighton Schools Alumni Association a donation of $15,000 to be passed on to the school district to help assist with the cost of the digital signboards in front of the Brighton High School. So we have talked to him for a while now. Lou has worked to facilitate that, make that happen, that contribution through the Brighton Schools Alumni Association. And we appreciate Mary Jane Link and those folks making that happen. So we thank him for that generous gift, and we do appreciate that and his support of the Brighton School District and Brighton High School. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The consent agenda is approved, 6 in favor and none opposed. Board members, any other items of business for this evening? Dr. McGowan, anything else this evening?
No.
Okay, then we will next meet on, where's my final page here, folks? Sorry. We next meet on February 9th at 7 p.m. and we'll continue to meet via Zoom. So thank you very much. A motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jolene, seconded by Larry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried, 6 in favor, none opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe evening. Take care.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.